Hello, and welcome to Music is the Drug, the Cowboy Junkies podcast. I'm Dave Bowler, and I wrote the band's biography of the same name. You can find us at all the usual podcast outlets, so don't forget to subscribe, like, and add reviews. We've got a special episode today, mainly concentrating on Townies, the 2020 release from Michael Timmins and Andy Maize. Both Mike and Andy will be talking us through that, but the story really starts with Mike's other streaming-only release from the lockdown days, Improvisations from the Between Time. Cast your mind back to March 2020, when we were all first locked down, restricted on where we could go and, especially, on who we could spend time with. For a lot of us, life was on hold, and for how long, we had no idea. Out of those restrictive circumstances, Mike was able to find a certain musical freedom.
Well, one of the benefits of the lockdown was that I was completely free to do whatever I wanted to do. I had the great benefit, as far as doing stuff solo. I had the benefit of our studio, which I could go to by myself and just sit there and keep all the lockdown protocols, and just fool around. And so one of the things with the improvisation record was I just felt I wanted to play, like I wanted to play music, I wanted to play guitar. And I've always sort of been interested in creating loops and things like that. So I spent a bit of time creating loops and creating ideas like that. And then I also wanted to experiment with different pedals and different mic placements and different, all sorts of studio stuff that I never have the time to do. I'm always like working on a record, and you got to get it recorded, and you got to get it mixed, and then you go on to the next thing. You go on tour, and then you come back and you're burnt out, so you don't want to go back into the studio. And so you're always sort of on this kind of treadmill. And the things that I want to do, I never do, because you tend, if you're in a hurry or you're sort of trying to get something done, you go to what you sort of go back to it, and you kind of I know this pedal, or I know this amp. So this was a great way for me to experiment and just fool around with stereo effects and miking things differently. And once and building the loops, and so once I started to build the loops, I just thought, well, they're cool, but I want something more expressive on them, so they're not me, they're I'm taking somebody else's music and creating an original loop, but it's not me, right? So I began to sort of play to them, and I began to really get into it. It was really fun. And so what I would do is I just set up this 45-minute basic combination of loops, and I'd sit there at my board, and I'd set up a series of pedals and hit record, and let the loop start to play, and I'd play to them. And as I was going along, I would sort of bring things in and out. I'd be playing with one hand and bringing faders in and out with another hand, and so I get different expressive loops happening, and just continue to play to them. Like really, truly improvise to them, and and also be using my feet to change effects. And it was just really fun. To me, it was really fun. It was just a fun way of spending a week in my studio just with myself, and because I had to be by myself anyway, so this is a fun way to do it. And then afterwards, I would sit there and go back again and just mix it, like figure out which loops I wanted to use with which guitar parts. And so again, it was a real studio project, and it just allowed me to express what that was my lockdown expression. That's sort of it. It's sort of like this complete no horizon, no expectations, no parameters, just whatever, just do what you want to do. And so it's a great expression for me, and I really love what came out about it. That's so, and again, no expectation about releasing it. We just sort of put it on the streaming media and let it go. There's no reason to promote it. Just it's there, and it'll always be there. We were saying earlier, I can look back at that. I can listen back to that 20 years from now, and I'll I'll remember what being the early stages of the lockdown were like, and it's my perfect expression for those, especially those first 4 months where it was pretty intense. In a conceptual way, it was very reflective of the lockout. There was no horizon and no expectation, and nobody knew what was going on, right? Especially those early days, we didn't know where this was going to go, or what was going to be affected, or when we were going to come out of it, or anything. So it was kind of throwing away all former ideas about what my job was in the studio and what my creative process was, and just rethinking it, because there's no reason not to. So because who knows what was going to happen in 6 months' time. It was very freeing, and it's sort of the playing side of it, with a record that we're working on now, our new record that'll hopefully be out in 2023. It allowed me, to bring some of the guitar playing ideas over to that record, and to, for as far as soloing goes, and how do I approach my guitar, and so that was kind of good too. So there was I carried a bit of it forward, but generally it was just this thing that I could do, and I don't know, just it was just pure expression, and it's sort of back to the Germinal days, back when the Germinal band that Al and I had in London, and that was just a complete improvisation band. It was much more formal than this, but there was no expectation involved. It was just do what you want to do and play what you want to play, and listen to each other, and that was it.
So where and when did Andy get involved in the whole process?
So the two kind of go together in some ways, with Townies and the improvisation record. Townies started Townies started first. So because we started Townies right before March 2020, so right before lockdown, and it was strictly, Andy and I have done a lot of work together in different ways. I've worked with his band Skydiggers, and he's sung on a lot of our records, and we like to hang out, and we both sort of have similar approaches to our music and to life in general. And so we were sitting around one night, and he was saying, we're always having these discussions about, well, as aging musicians, and in this crazy non-existent ecosystem, the music ecosystem, it's very you sort of figure out, well, why do we keep making music, and why do we keep putting out records, and blah blah blah. Boring for other people, but it's what we talk about. And so he was saying he sort of had this thought that he just wanted to make these songs that were just, one idea, like, it could be 30 seconds, it could be 45 seconds, they just kind of like these one idea songs that had not necessarily a chorus or a bridge. You didn't have to, didn't stick to the traditional forms. And at that time, I was also working on a film score for a documentary, and it was a very guitar-driven film score. The producer and the director told me they wanted sort of a Dead Man score, which is a movie that Neil Young scored for Jim Jarmusch, which is a really very cool soundtrack, very very sort of crazy guitar. So I was sort of working on some ideas for that. So when he mentioned this sort of, this idea of just doing 30-second songs, I thought, well, let me throw you some ideas I've been doing, and see what happens. So I sent him a bunch of little excerpts or these little film cues that I was doing, which is basically, that's what a film cue usually is. It's one idea, one little short, maybe hopefully 30 seconds for a minute. And I threw a bunch of them at them, and he got back to me in a few days and said, look, I've got some ideas. So we got together in the studio, and I put up the cues, and he sang to them, and these lyrics that he was working on, a few melodies, and as he says, as he just told me, he said they were very as improvised as the cues. Just like if they inspired him, he wrote. If they didn't, he moved on.
There's a sense of stream of consciousness to a lot of the lyrics, with no second guessing involved. As I said to Andy, there's something about REM to the way the words tumble on Townies.
Well, that's very flattering. I'm a big Michael Stipe fan, and I was trying to not, I was just responding. Mike sent far more cues than we ended up using, so I would go through them, and I would either respond immediately to something, or if I didn't, then I would go on to the next thing. I didn't want to get precious or bogged down about anything. So that's, and part of that also is just the nature of the, just kind of letting the lyrics come from, or letting the vocal ideas come from Mike's guitar parts. There wasn't a whole lot of going. We only went back, and sometimes I would fix a line or something from a vocal there, because all of the musical ideas were already complete.
So we put those together, and then the lockdown happened. And then I began to work on the improvisation record, because I couldn't get together with him because we weren't allowed 2 people in one room. And so I began to work on that. And then, as COVID restrictions began to ease, I then threw him some of those as well. I began to throw him some of those ones that I was working on for the improv record. I just sort of clip a few little sections and send them to him. And he began to do the same thing. So once restrictions began to undo, he sort of came back in and we just continued the process, basically, him singing to bits and pieces. And so they kind of jive together, they kind of went together, but they're different projects, but they kind of overlapped a bit, which isn't unusual.
Was lockdown sort of the opportunity to progress it further? I mean, you've both got different careers and so on. I mean, had life been normal, would you have been able to find the time to devote to this that it needed, you think?
Well, at first, certainly, the middle of March in 2020, or third week in March, when everything kind of fell apart, I didn't do anything for 2 or 3 months, other than just kind of hunker down with my wife and son, and we brought her father out of a retirement home. So I guess I'd have to say not right at the beginning. And then I think Mike and I got together again in June of 2020 was the first time we kind of resurfaced and started back at it. So it was really great to have something to focus on, because, as you say, at that time, there was very little going on. So, and just the 2 of us getting together, we felt that was, with all the unknown, but, with still, even in June of 2020, there was a lot of information floating around where, nobody really knew still what was going on, but we felt it was okay to get together in the studio and work on some material. So it was really great to have that.
How quickly did you sort of realize that you were getting a story, a journey together, rather than individual songs that, could work separately? I mean, how quickly did it become kind of a cohesive piece as a whole?
I think immediately. I think right from the very beginning, it, like I say, we had talked about this direction of writing about Town of Mount Royal, and so we did have that focus right off the bat. I felt that it would be, we wanted to focus on something that we had in common, that wasn't band related. We'd been having discussions about approaching the creative process, particularly songwriting, in kind of maybe I guess more of a non-traditional way for us, not worrying about, verses and choruses and bridges, and just, if something was 30 seconds long, that's how long it was supposed to be. So that's kind of the approach we took when we started the project. I think that's something that appealed to both of us. was that idea of not having to think, okay, well, we've got here's a first verse, and now what do we do for a chorus? And I realized that, so many of the vocal lines that I came up with and was improvising were based on what Mike was doing on the guitar, and that ultimately it was a duet between guitar and voice. All of Mike's parts were done in advance, because they were just most of what he sent me were improvisations. So really, the putting the concept together, or the album, or whatever you want to call it, putting it together was really just getting vocal parts on top of the musical ideas and fragments that Mike had already created.
When did it morph from single idea songs into this bigger, I don't want to use the word concept album because that brings up all sorts of horrible connotations, but into the Audioplay idea?
Well, it is a concept record for sure. I mean, I'm a big Rick Wakeman, King Arthur fan. especially the stage production with the ice skaters. Oh, we could do that. We're all pretty good skaters, I think that's. I think. Hang on. I got to make a little note here to write this down. We began this thing as sort of this. Andy just wanted to do a couple of songs and whatever, and he came in with these ideas that were about which the Townies plays off of, is this little town that we both grew up in. It's really a suburb of Montreal, but it was this weird idyllic kind of Norman Rockwell without the American flag place, where it was just perfect. For as a kid growing up in this little suburb, it was just it had its own police department who basically, if they caught you doing something bad, they'd put you in the back of the car and drive you home. It was just this weird idyllic world. We both grew up in it, and but we didn't know each other there, which was really weird. We never met it. We never met there, but we had lots of friends in common who we realized years later, when we met up as musicians, as friends, became friends. We realized this common denominator, and we'd often talk about it. So he had this idea of writing this record or these little blurbs about the town, and we were called Townies. That's what you called each other.
The place in the '60s it was lousy with kids. I mean, there were just kids everywhere. So it was really a pretty idyllic place to be riding your bike around, and it was just, you'd go out during the summer, you'd go out in the morning on your bike, and you'd just be home in time for lunch, and then back in time for supper, and then back before dark. And, you just had all this freedom. And so initially that was that was kind of what I was drawing upon for inspiration. And then the pandemic hit, and then, the rioting in the States hit, and the Black Lives Matter movement came to prominence. So suddenly you couldn't ignore all of these things that were going on around us. So they all came to be present in Townies.
This dark cloud overcame us, and the next set of songs he came in with a few months later were kind of about being, lockdown and sort of this weird state that we were in, this weird no horizon. What the hell's going on? Do we have a livelihood still? And then out of COVID, then the whole Black Lives Matter movement began to with the murder of George Floyd, began to take prominence. And of course, we're all watching the same news at this point, and watching the various horrors. And that then began to enter into his writing. The next time we met, these songs were kind of being presented. So we began to sort of see this weird theme happening. This sort of from innocence to experience sort of theme, with these early days in the town at Royal, where we were all white, English, and happy, and to where we were now, where the world was kind of just in turmoil and being turned upside down, and not necessarily a bad thing, but it just is. That's what was happening. So we realized we had this concept, but there's no way anybody would get this if you just put these songs on there. It was the songs were very abstract, and the concept was pretty loose, and it was really in our head. So that's the thing we struggled with most, was how to put across this this concept, like this journey from innocence to experience. And and we kind of sat on it for a while and had the songs and had the recordings, and I mixed it, and then I sort of I think I had this idea. I think through a conversation I had with Andy, he sort of said something, and I had this idea of this audio play, and whatever that is, I don't even know what that is. It's basically an album, but it's about, we're trying to twig the listener into thinking in terms of narrative. So try and dig a bit deeper. Like don't take these songs as individual songs, take them as a whole. And it grew from there. And that's sort of where it came from. And that was our hook, that was our way. Okay, so we'll try and set this thing up as a fully formed narrative from and it in a very conceptual way it works.
The stage directions offer a sort of thread to help you find your way through Townies. The scene for what is to come is set up by the first one.
Scene. Opening. An almost bare minimalist stage. The stage and surroundings are black, the lighting white. The only lights are single overhead spots on the upstage and downstage positions, as well as on the one piece of scenery, a closed red door, standing alone side stage left, angled inwards and facing the front position. Upstage right is the seated guitar player, fortified by his amplifiers, guitars, and various pedals. Downstage center is the singer and his microphone stand. He steps towards it and says, "This is not a linear story, but it is a story. It's about a journey from innocence to experience." No, forget that. It's a story about a journey from innocence to vulnerability.
The innocence to experience thing is interesting because obviously we were talking about that, about missing children and Blake and stuff. It's interesting that Andy was also in that kind of area of thinking as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, we'd had this common experience as children, and this common memory of this golden land. This is this perfect little community, and anybody who grew up there in that time. And there's a couple. It's funny enough. There's another band in town called Blue Rodeo, or a pretty big Canadian band, and another member, Greg Keeler, one of the founding members, is also a townie, and he grew up there as well. So we all have this. This common weird background, and so so we Annie and I had this common understanding of this innocence that we grew up in, and how amazing it was, and how it's probably lost. I don't know if it exists anywhere at this point. So we were experiencing the same thing. We were experiencing COVID. Everybody's kind of experienced the same thing in different ways, but the same idea. And then, as I say, we were all locked in our houses, so we were all watching, the Black Lives Matter movement and the various murders and the rioting happening, and that was a common experience too. So we were able to sort of easily piece this innocence to experience side together, even without Blake.
You think of children as innocent and vulnerable and so on. I think as you get to your late 50s, your early 60s, you realise that you're probably more vulnerable at that end than you were at the start.
It's funny, isn't it? You in Chinese culture, with the Chinese zodiac, when you hit 60, you basically go back to the beginning. Yeah, I think maybe there is it's certainly not the same type of vulnerability, but there is a vulnerable, if I could say that word, vulnerability that kicks in. Yeah, for sure.
What the fuck is going on is a perfect opener, because it's kind of both ends of it, isn't it? I mean, as a kid, you just, what the hell's going on with the world? I don't understand. And then, you get to lockdown and you get to all the stuff that's going on, and it still doesn't make any sense.
Well, I mean, I think, as Andy said, what the fuck's going on? He during that period, especially, he said, that I just keep asking myself this question: what the fuck is going on? Like, and I think we all did, right? We were all like, what the fuck is going on? Like, it was totally unfathomable and completely non-understandable. You couldn't figure it out. It was out of all of our experiences. So it was kind of that. It was a very key question.
What the fuck's going on? 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 Won't you tell me? Won't you tell me? Won't you tell me? Won't you let me in on the secret? Won't you tell me? Can't you tell me? Won't you let me in on the secret?
I loved the riff. It was, it was kind of a Stones thing going on there for me. And I just wanted to, that was just the visceral reaction to everything at that point was what the fuck's going on. So.
Yeah, I think it still is somehow.
I think so too.
Maybe things have opened up a little bit and whatever, but I think all the chaos that it unleashed has just got worse and worse somehow.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it definitely the repercussions from the last 2.5 years are I think we're going to feel them for a long time.
Parking Lot Richard, that's a very eerie sort of thing. It sets up the concept that this is a journey right off, but you have to bring it's a record that you have to bring some of yourself to, I think. And that song, I think, is one of those that really introduces that idea.
Throw the map out on the table for the navigator. Follow your instruments down to your instincts. Eyes on the horizon, keep your wings level. Have you ever been upside down or under the table? Parking Lot Richard, sovereign of the disabled, buried face down under gravel and cable. Drive-in Jesus, when mother was able to sing all the hymns from the grave to the cradle.
There's a number of disparate ideas in that one. There's the whole idea. Mike was a pilot at one point in time that I didn't realize that. I mean, until one of our more recent conversations, recent being, a few years ago. And so there's that whole idea, and I was about being a pilot and keeping your eyes on the horizon, but that I was thinking about when John F. Kennedy Jr. Had his plane crash, how he did not use his instruments and lost his sense of what the plane was doing by not using his instruments. I was thinking about that. I have a vocal teacher whose mother would go to drive-in church services, and so that's the parking lot Jesus idea, or drive-in Jesus. And then there's was it Richard III? Was his body found under a parking lot? Yeah. So, I mean, all of those different ideas, I don't know even really how they all connect, but there I was kind of channeling the early Michael Stipe REM stuff, where you're getting a feeling more than a feeling of what the lyrics are trying to impart, rather than some sort of linear story.
The town, that idea that the instant that we're born, we're all identical, and then luck and other people and your own thoughts and everything else then conspires to drive us in all kinds of different ways.
Scene: the town.
Singer, we are all born into experience, and for one infinitesimal parsec of a finite nanosecond, we all share that experience equally. And then the journey begins.
That's a really powerful sentiment. I really love that line. It's one of those kind of things that if people actually stopped and thought, it might change the world, you know? It is though, isn't it? You know, I mean, we're all busy living and dying, and really there's no difference between any of us other than what we experience, I suppose.
Well, that's for sure. That's for sure. And I think we're, we seem to be getting further and further away from that idea. I mean, my wife and I, over the course of the pandemic, have, constantly the question that keeps coming up for us in relation to the world around us is how much is enough? Meaning, how much does one need in order to live a productive and healthy life? And you see, so many people and corporations just trying to acquire and more. And I mean, how much does anyone need? There's lots for everyone if we just spread it around.
Meet me at Gears. Let's buy a pack of hockey cards. Double bubble bazooka Joe. 2 dimes will get you far.
The sense of wonder for everything's a miracle, when a packet of cards and some chewing gum was enough, and when the sports scores were everything, and that's a nice nostalgic. If only the world was still that simple,
Well, that's very much based on stories that Mike and I would sit and talk and talk about stories of our time in town of Mount Royal, and so those are all specific stories.
It's interesting. I wonder if that's why we, as we get older, we're still so obsessed with sports, because that's the one thing that you can legitimately carry through life and not be a weirdo, from your childhood.
True. I guess there's also there's something obviously tribal about being a sports being a fan of a specific team, and a sense of belonging. Sometimes sometimes for me it gets way too, I have to pull myself back, because I'm just saying, what are you doing? Why are you so invested in something that is, that it is ultimately, it's not meaningless, but it sometimes it occupies way too much time and space when we could be doing other things. It's a bit of an escape, I guess.
Never the same. That's one of those things that it's perfect at the length that it is. It does what it needs to do, and then go. It's just that right length, isn't it? And it is life never is the same again.
And I think that it applies to every step along the way. I mean, you hope to hold on to the good things, but it's never the same. Nothing ever truly repeats. You can never hold on to things, and I think I have a tendency to try to hold on to things at times, things that I like, moments in time, and you can't. It just keep moving forward.
From the opening section, where Townies talks about a joyous childhood, with the song Lockdown, things take a darker turn and come right up to date to put the spotlight on our world. Because Townies was always designed for streaming rather than a physical release, it meant it could be of the moment at the moment it was released, as Mike points out.
It's liberating in that, there's not the expense, right? So it's very easy to do. I could go in the studio today, record a song, come home, and upload it, and it'd be on Spotify, tomorrow, basically, right? So there's no expense, there's no manufacturing, there's no that part of it is gone. So so it is very liberating in that you're not thinking, okay, we're spending, thousands of dollars, and now we got to spend thousands of dollars manufacturing the record. We got to wait, 6 months for the record to come to be manufactured, and then we got to get in line with the distributor because they can only distribute so many records at a time, and then once you've done all that, you spend all this money. So it's like, okay, well now we got to hire PR people because we got to sell some of these to make it worthwhile. So yeah, it's very liberating because we knew we weren't going to go tour the thing. We had other obligations that we had. So this was strictly a creative process. And so both records, the improv record and the Townies record, are completely liberating because they're completely about creation and just, if we like it, great. And and then we release it through the streaming services, and the only promotion is a couple of a couple of Facebook posts or whatever. So there's no, if other people get into it, that's great. If they don't, it doesn't really matter because it's really for us. It's our thing. It's completely and totally our thing.
Run for your life to lockdown. Run for your life, lockdown.
The original word, the placeholder in there was touchdown. And then running for your life, it's a touchdown. And then it became, there were other words that were more appropriate to what was actually happening in the moment. And, the lockdown kind of has several different meanings. Obviously, the pandemic meaning, but also the mass shooting meaning of what's been going on for years and years in the States.
After all those useless thoughts and prayers still feel hanging in the air. Running for your life, you get knocked down.
That every time that there's some horrific event, somebody appears and says, our thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families, and it's all such bullshit at this point in time. It's meaningless. They're just meaningless platitudes. Nobody's prepared to do anything about it. It's sickening, and I'm not talking about that nobody's prepared to do anything, but it seems that anyone who's in a position of influence or power is prepared to do anything about it.
Show me the reason. Show me the reason. This is a time of schemes, of grifters and fakers and black limousines.
Show me the reason, the duality of that. Why are we doing this? But also, why are you believing that stuff? Why are you thinking that? And I think that was one of the scariest things in the last 2 or 3 years, was all the hoaxes and, the things that people would suddenly start believing from out of nowhere. And, that is a frightening thing going forward.
There's so much discussion about the role that social media plays in misinformation and distraction. And it just... it does sometimes seem like a bit of a time of dreams, that we, what's real and what's not, what's the truth and what's not.
I sometimes think that the age of enlightenment is behind us now. Somehow.
It feels like it, doesn't it? Yeah, we used to admire people who were smart, and now they're considered to be an elite and used in a negative context.
And I guess it is that thing with social media, because, we're all, we all of us now, we go on Twitter and issue our ministerial statements about, stuff that we have absolutely no idea about. That questioning yourself has kind of gone out of fashion. It's now you are your own prime minister or president or whatever.
Yeah. And what's also gone out is gone out of style is exploring or investigating both sides of an issue, familiarizing yourself with both sides of an issue so that one can make an informed decision. It just seems like people, if they have an opinion, then social media just reinforces the opinion that they already have.
Now I question everything I thought I knew. What do I know? What do I know about this or that? What do I know? What do I know about this or that? About this or that?
As a piece, as a whole, it's got that very counterculture feeling to it, the late 60s, early 70s thing. And there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of that nowadays.
Well, I'm glad you feel that, because that's certainly, I'd say for both Mike and I, our formative years are probably the, late 60s through the 70s. That's when we were probably at our most impressionable and most, the developing teen years and into our early 20s. And so there was certainly, there was still a lot of counterculture stuff going on at that time through the 70s that came out of the 50s and 60s. So, yeah, definitely. I think we've been influenced by that.
How was it not to have to write lyrics for a change?
Oh, very liberating. Really, I enjoyed it a lot. It's nice just to be in charge of one thing, and so it was fun. I liked it a lot. I'm quite happy just to do music or just to play guitar. I mean, I love writing lyrics and I love writing songs, but it's a whole other mindset and a whole other space and a whole other responsibility. And the record takes on, any record that if it involves my songs, takes on a whole other dimension of connectivity for me, right? So this was kind of nice. It was a very shared experience.
The song King James is perhaps the cornerstone of the second act of Townies, returning to the anger of lockdown, but now dealing in specifics.
Thoughts and prayers. Andy wrote all the lyrics for this, of course. So yeah, I think he that phrase was used more and more during that period. It's always used. It continues to be used, but certainly during, we are all, our thoughts and prayers were going out to George Floyd's loved ones. It's like, Jesus Christ, like really, like our thoughts and prayers. We can do a lot more than that, than giving them our thoughts and prayers. So I think that's sort of part of that sort of the what the fuck is going on part of it. It's like, what we can give these platitudes, but we can't actually do anything of any consequence.
Nothing has changed. Why does this stain still remain from the chains of cruelties past uncovered, now rediscovered? If not now, then when? If not us, then who shall make the difference out of indifference?
Those lines just came out. I don't know where they came from. I know, the whole idea started with the King James, and that's LeBron James, the basketball player. That's his nickname. And beyond that, maybe I was just watching a basketball game, but he wasn't. I don't know. It's just sometimes it's just the sound of the words that gets the process started. Like King James lays the blame for the game, and then it goes from there. I started with that. Those were the first three lines that came, and then it developed into something I just like the sound of those 3 lines. They didn't mean anything to me. But then the other stuff comes into play as, obviously as the whole Black Lives Matter, as that incident, took over the headlines. It just, the rest of it just came based out of all of that, just that darkness that, those incidences have been just hiding in plain sight forever.
I mean, as you go through all those names and it goes on and on and on, and you just to the surface, obviously. And you get to the bit and countless others. I mean, that just turns the stomach, really, when you get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, Mike and I started putting together a list of names, and we could have gone on for forever, and it's sad. And in Canada, we added names of Indigenous people who had been killed by the police as well. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking, and it's disgusting, and it's wrong, and it just never seems to end.
Scene closing. We are all born into experience. It's the journey we take that teaches us how to understand experience. And in turn, the understanding teaches us to recognize and accept our vulnerability. It allows me to ask myself, do I have the guts to get up and walk through that door? Singer stares at door, pauses, then walks purposefully towards it, reaches a hand towards the doorknob. Stage goes black.
In the end, you get up and you go through the door. What's on the other side?
That is the question, isn't it? That is the open-ended ending where we have yet to determine that.
I think with Townies, it's an old-fashioned record in the sense it's one of those that you want to sort of close yourself off to everything else and really concentrate on it. And if it was a physical thing, it'd be nice to have a sleeve with the notes on it, a bit like the Kennedy thing. Whereas the improvisations is something that you can let kind of come and wash over you. I mean, they're nice counterpoints in that way.
Yeah, for sure. The improvisation record, that's you can sit down there and listen to it closely if you want. But yeah, it's definitely a record you can put on and wonder why you're so annoyed after 20 minutes and you realize there's this noise going on in the background. But Townies, to truly understand it and to get into it, like you got to sit down and listen to it and try and follow it. And you're right, it would benefit a ton with serious liner notes like the Kennedy suites. Like the Kennedy suites, those liner notes are extensive because it's the only way to really piece it together. It gives you the outline, and this could use that for sure. I think it could. I think those little talking bits are kind of meant to give little guideposts, signposts, but they're very conceptual. So yeah, proper liner notes would have really helped Townies, but that's one thing about streaming that you can't really do. You can kind of throw in a download or something like that, but it doesn't really work.
You got any thoughts to perform it as a play one day?
Well, we played some of the songs. So Andy and I did a few of these songs when we did the last Leighton Lounge last June. We did like 5 or 6 songs off it, which was really fun. We really enjoyed that. And Andy keeps threatening me to drag me to a club to perform them. And I said, yeah, sure, but you handle it. You do it. Like you said, I don't want to set it up. Like I don't want this. I don't want it to become a burden on me. But I think he's the same thing. He does a lot of his stuff for Skydiggers and a lot of that sort of the business side of it and the logistics side of it. That is not fun. So I think both of us would like to perform it, but we'd want somebody else to handle it and just tell us where to go. We'll deal with the music, and somebody else handle the logistics of it. I mean, I think it'd be a really cool avant-garde play. I'd love it to be presented that way, but again, that requires somebody to walk in and say, okay, I will handle the book on this and how it's presented and how it looks. You guys just do the music, and I'll tell you, how it's going to work. So I would love to do that. And, it's not necessarily this thing, it won't time out. We could do it 10 years from now, really, if somebody came forward, but it's going to require somebody to do it, somebody else to sort of a third, there's two of us can do the music, but a third person has to do create a live experience for it.
We'd like it to be a play. Yeah, that would be our ultimate goal, would be to create some sort of stage representation of what we're doing. And I feel like the Townies, has not really run the full course of its whatever, of its life, its creative life, or whatever. I think that there will be, hopefully we still would like to do some sort of stage production of it, which would involve us performing as much of it as we can live. So maybe then there would be an incentive to make a physical embodiment of it.
Until that point, you'll just have to find both Townies and Improvisations from the Between Time on all the usual streaming services. If you haven't heard them yet, please make some time to check them out. You'll be glad you did. That's all for this episode, but next time we really are going back to a song from the Caution Horses, as we promised a few episodes ago. There are just a couple of shows to come now before we take a short break for the northern summer, so make sure you subscribe to the show at your podcast provider before then to make sure you still get your podcasts after the break. Cowboy Junkie's new album, Songs of the Recollection, is out now. If you haven't got a copy yet, it's available from all the usual outlets or direct from the band at cowboyjunkies.com. You can also get a copy of the book Music is the Drug from there too. The Junkies are back on the road with new dates coming in all the time, in North America, all over Europe, and in Australia and New Zealand. Keep on checking the website for news of those shows. If you're a Spotify user, you can follow our growing podcast playlist there. All the details of that, and how to find both Townies and Improvisations from the Between Time, and everything else too, is in the show notes. See you next time.